Now I get to introduce the person who's going to announce for governor here in Lowell. His official announcement today. And the last time I did that was actually 20 years ago. And at the time I introduced a friend of mine who announced his candidacy for governor, and his name was Lowell. I think we all remember back to 1990. And what was going on, and if you remember back then, we had really high unemployment. The state budget and the state government was pretty much bankrupt, and our economy was a real mess. And if you remember at the time, Bill Weld and Paul Cellucci won the election. They went to Beacon Hill, rolled up their sleeves, and they actually turned the state around. And they had a lot of help, but if you ask Bill or Paul today, to this day, they'll tell you that the heart and soul of their administration was a guy named Charlie Baker. And now here we are again, it's 20 years later, and it's almost like we've come full circle, because we're at the point right now where things are bad again. Only this time it does seem to be a lot worse. We have 300,000 people who are unemployed in the state right now, the highest unemployment rate since 1976. And we have people who during this fiscal crisis have lost their life savings. And we have thousands of families wherever you go in the state that are just barely hanging on. And it's a difficult time. And I think, in my capacity as a legislator, I deal with people, but I also own a real estate company. And I get to sit down with people and talk to them, in a way that most people elected officials never do. And I can't tell you that, since this crisis has started, how many houses I've gone to, and you sit down at that kitchen table and you talk to people and they say, I don't want to sell the house, but I just lost my job. And I can't afford it here anymore. And then you talk to other people and they say, we're moving out of Massachusetts because we can't afford to live here anymore. The cost of living is so high. We're moving to the Carolinas or Florida or Texas. And you think it's the older people that are leaving, but it's really not. It's the younger people. People who have advanced degrees who we want to keep in the state because they're really the next generation. Make sure our state stays vibrant over time. And then lately I've been talking to a lot of people who, they don't want to leave, but they'll say, the company I'm working for, I just transferred my job to Rhode Island and New Hampshire and to other states where the cost of doing business is a lot lower than Massachusetts, and they're more competitive. So those are huge problems that we face. And the most frustrating thing for me, and I think for all of you, is when you look at state government, there's this huge disconnect between what's happening in people's everyday lives and what's happening at the State House. It's almost like there are two different worlds operating. The House doesn't talk to the Senate doesn't talk to the House, and the governor doesn't talk to anybody. There's no plan, there's no leadership, and nobody is really working together to do the right thing. And when decisions are made, unfortunately, they're always the wrong decisions. Rather than making the state more affordable, we've increased taxes by $1 billion over the last couple of years. The governor just came out last week with another new tax. He's going to tax candy and soda and all kinds of other things. Charlie Baker is the right person at the right place at the right time. He is the very best hope for the future of the Commonwealth. And anybody who knows Charlie knows that he has tremendous leadership ability. He knows how to set an agenda, bring people together, and get the job done. And he's got great experience. I mentioned that he worked for Bill Weld and Paul Cellucci. But then he left and he went to Harvard Pilgrim. And when he took over there, they were in receivership. He did a lot of different things to turn that company around. But at the end of the day, when he left, they had been ranked #1 in customer satisfaction by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years in a row of any HMO in the entire country. Now I'd ask you, how many services do we provide on the state level that are ranked #1 in customer satisfaction? How many services do we provide that anybody's even satisfied with? And that's really what this election's about. We think we can do a better job. I know you think we can do a better job. But most importantly, the people of the state, they deserve a better government than they have right now. So it is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce to you the next governor of the Commonwealth, somebody who's going to be able to go in, clean up the mess, and lead the turnaround in state government that we all know we need and we deserve. That's my friend, Charlie Baker.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm still looking for the reform. If you look at the governor's budget that he submitted to the legislature this past week, you know, it's another $175 million out of the rainy day fund that was left by Governor Romney, $600 million in maybe it'll happen federal reimbursements, but nobody really knows, and a series of new taxes that Richard talked about earlier. And all we're really doing here is we're just kicking the can ahead and pushing off, you know, pushing off the ultimate day of reckoning when decisions have to get made and stuff has to change. That's not the way to get out of this jam. The way to get out of this jam is to reform the way state government works, simplify the operating model, take on a lot of the issues that everybody said for years, we should pursue this, we should do that, and actually do it and get it done. That's the way to get out of the jam that we're in. To suck it up, own the problem, and get serious about creating a sustainable operating model for the future, recognizing that everybody else is living with a new normal, right? Families, they're living with a new normal. Cities and towns, they're living with a new normal. Small businesses, they're living with a new normal. Everybody's tightening their belt. But you don't see the same kind of urgency about that coming out of Beacon Hill. The governor filled 1,300 vacant positions last year in the midst of this terrible economic climate. We don't even have a hiring freeze in place at the state level. How could we possibly be operating under a model like that at a time like this? Two sets of rules, folks. One set of rules for all of us, and another set of rules for state government. Shouldn't work that way. State government should be working for the people who pay the bills.